And I would also add that resilience, it's not just those high points of intense challenge. It's also dealing with the cumulative challenges of a fast-paced life. So in a way, we all need resilience, not just for what we are already experiencing, but for what we might experience. So it's very interesting also how resilience fits into thoughts about sustainability. There is a lot of talk in the scientific community about how resilience may be even a more appropriate mental framework for dealing with challenges than sustainability. Because if you think about it, sustainability kind of implies that things are going to be at this steady state, whereas what we know about natural systems is that it's much more like this. And these sine wave type things are influenced by a variety of constraints within an environment. And if we're one of those beings, a member of a population in an environment, it serves us to be able to respond in a resilient manner so that we can cope effectively and creatively with changes. So I can give you a few examples about how the domains that I use in my warrior wheel training and resilience wheel training operate. To me, it starts with self-knowledge. And that can encompass things like becoming more comfortable with our emotions, with our shadow sides. Basically, there's a lot of emotional literacy that very few of us learned in our families. And I do believe that families do the best they can, but one thing that I've learned being trained as a chaplain and working with people in really tough situations is you see how all of us carry things that are intergenerational. And they're cultural, our family culture, how we do things, our views of the world, our views of whether life is good, easy, fair, what's worth fighting for, our definitions of God or how things work in the universe. Is it fair? Is it just? Is it benevolent? Boy, those things all come together to play a huge role in how each of us faces our challenges each day. And quite honestly, it can be challenging just to get out of bed in the morning. There's a book called Invisible Heroes, and it's written about how to heal from PTSD. And the reason they chose that, the two authors chose that title, is because they acknowledge that a lot of people have been through things in their lives that are invisible if we're walking down the street. And so in this work, I want to honor the fact that if we dig deep into our own life histories, likely we will find things that we can say, wow, you know, that took something for me to get through that. And there may not be a lot of people in our lives who are validating those efforts, because maybe now we just feel like we're kind of normal. But quite honestly, getting to kind of normal can be heroic. And another piece that I like to look at within resilience is something called ethical courage. Ethical courage is not just getting out of bed, although that is a part of it, but what happens when we move into the realm of dealing with other human beings, seeing things in a workplace, seeing things in somebody else's family, in our own family, that doesn't quite sit right, seeing political realities. It's so easy to say, gosh, there's nothing I can do. Ethical courage is about developing very, very slowly through I'm not going to say simple or easy, but through maybe micro-level actions, the ability to stand up when it counts. And one of my greatest role models for this was learning about the work of the Oleners, who wrote a book on altruism, looking at people during the Holocaust who rescued Jews. And they found that these families typically had some common characteristics. And not surprisingly, these characteristics are things that Warrior Wheel lifts up as important. Empathy, being able to connect with another human being and understand their pain and be concerned about them. Having enough sort of free attention where you're not so worried about your own troubles, but rather you can share a little bit of that attention and look at and be curious about somebody else's life. In these families of the rescuers, they also had very high standards of ethics. And yet, that was paired with the assumption that the kids would go on and do important and good things in the world, but it wasn't forced down their throat how they would do that. There was an honoring of each person's dignity and uniqueness. And I'll just throw in a couple more things because I think this is such a valuable lesson, because if you can act strongly and ethically with dignity in a situation where your life is on the line, I figure, boy, that's really a litmus test. So a couple things more about these families. A lot of relationships with people who are different, and a valuing of a kind of basic human dignity, a sense of fairness, that there are these ethical principles that guide how we live our lives. And they saw their parents reaching out and showing hospitality. So not just saying you ought to do this, but actually doing it. And again, hospitality may not seem like a very brave thing to do, but it involves opening your heart, opening your home, taking that extra little step to say, come over, let's be in relationship. And what's exciting to me about that is these things that bear fruit in the most difficult human situations actually start from these small little seeds that may look like they don't mean that much. And yet I would say they're within the realm and reach of all of us. So I'm excited about resilience. I think it is profoundly important for just about anything that's going on in the world today. And I think it's important because the more we open our eyes and our hearts, we're going to be struck and touched by things that are so amiss in the environment, in our political system, in relationships between countries, even things that are happening in our own lives. And it is easy to be overwhelmed. However, the good news is that there are some specific, repetitive behaviors that we can pay attention to that are going to make us feel like, yeah, I'm still in the game.